Hi guys, hi. How's it going? How y'all doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing my next palette roulette palette review video on my channel. This is a series that I have been doing for several years, walking through every single palette that I bring into my collection, telling you about the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things that I experienced with said palette, showing you some looks, showing you the swatches, and then pulling a new palette and we do it all over again. This isn't necessarily about the brand new palettes out there on the market because that's not often how I roll here, but these palettes do happen to be fairly new out there. So that said, usually it's just about a palette that I have in my collection. I have reviewed every single palette that I have had in my collection, and that playlist is linked down in the description box for you. But if you're ever interested in my thoughts and opinions on a palette that you have in your collection, I might have reviewed it for you. Please, I implore you, go through those videos. They're pretty clearly marked, and I would love to hear your thoughts. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. Ultimately, this is my self-care. I like coming out here talking to you guys about all the things coming into my collection, leaving my collection, the things that I'm using in my collection, and I hope that you're here for it. I hope that you find that I'm a kick in the pants to hang out with, that you really like my channel here, and you'll want to subscribe before you go, because I am a kick in the pants to hang out with. And I'm trying to get to 2K this year, and I would love to have you along for this crazy ride of mine. It's a fun time. That said, if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on these two palettes specifically, then please keep on watching. Let's roll into it. Let's get to the review of these two palettes. All right. Today we are here to talk about the new Pat McGrath Mothership 12 palette, the Petalmorphosis palette, and the new-ish Natasha Denona I Need a Warm palette. This isn't super new. I think her newest palette out right now is Bloom, which I don't have in my hot little hands yet, but I will. But this is still a relatively new palette on the market. It hasn't quite been a year. I'm going to start with the Natasha Denona palette because I think I have a lot more to say about the Pat McGrath palette. I review Natasha Denona a lot. I have a lot of Natasha Denona palettes in my collection, and I talk about her palettes a lot, so this is going to be a really easy one for me to do. I don't have nearly as much to say. Her formula is almost always the same for me. I really like her formula. So we're going to start with this one, and then we'll roll into the Pat McGrath. So this is the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm palette. This is a $69 palette that has 0.64 ounces of product in it, or 0.04 ounces per pan with 15 pans. The front of the palette is really kind of cool. It's like, it's got that like plexi on top of it with that like three-dimensional kind of like almost artistic nature to the packaging, to make it look a little bit more, I don't know, elevated to some extent. It just says Natasha Denona here, I Need a Warm here. It's not like raised or anything, but it is like a laminate that's on top of this plexi, so you can feel the letters, but it's almost completely flush with the packaging. On the back is the standard Natasha Denona packaging with the little holes in it so that you can pop the shadows out, because all of her midi and all of her large size pans in the palettes are interchangeable. You can move them from palette to palette, make your own, build your own Natasha Denona palette if you'd like to. I really like it for my build your own palette series, right? When I need to bring in a shade in a matte specifically, if I maybe don't have that matte in my single shadow inventory. That said, I don't typically mix and match my Natasha Denona palettes because I'm just a little bit too OCD about it. I love this palette because the center section here between the bottom and the top of the palette is like this rose gold metal-esque look. It's really, really pretty. It does have a beautiful mirror on the inside that I very rarely take these off, honestly, because I hardly ever use these for the mirror. And then it does stand up on its own also. It doesn't have any problems with laying flat, but it isn't going to fold back on itself, right? It is a pretty stout package. I don't think that anything is going to get in the way of like ruining your eyeshadows if you're traveling with it. It does take quite a bit of effort to like push on it enough to get that open. So I don't think it's in any danger if you do travel with it. I have traveled with my Natasha Denona palettes. I travel with every single one of my palettes. I don't really think that a palette should be out there on the market if it's so fragile that it's going to break because it's in your suitcase. But that being said, if I am on a plane, I do put all of my makeup and my makeup bag into my backpack and carry it on with me so that I know it's not jumbled around like that. This is the sister palette to the I Need a Nude and is all about warm tones. This is also the debut palette for two new formulas in here that are the Slip Cream Matte and the Metal Gloss. Natasha Denona is really known for switching up formulas all the time. She does want to make the best kind of formulation out of her products that she can. She also wants to be kind of a landmark in the industry for these new-ish and new fad kind of formulas. To some extent, I think that she maybe goes just a little bit overboard with it, if I'm honest with you. And I wish that there were just a couple years where she would just live with the formulations that she has and go with those formulations and maybe correct the problems with those formulations versus making up a whole brand new formulation. Sometimes it does get a little bit old, even though there's new formulas coming out all the time. And this is coming from somebody who stands Natasha Denona. She's my favorite. She is the brand that I have the most products from in my collection all around, but also the brand that I have the most palettes from. I think I have 40 palettes from her. There are 15 warm neutral eyeshadows in this palette in 7 different formulas. 6 of them are matte, 2 metallic, 1 multichrome, 2 sparkling foiled, 1 duochrome, 1 slip cream matte, and 2 metal gloss. So that said already, if you've been around, you know I like more of a 50-50 split. This is very shimmer heavy, which is okay. It's okay. If it can't be 50-50, you know, because there are 15 pans, I do prefer there to be more mattes than shimmers. There definitely isn't in this palette. The Slip Cream Matte is this one here. You can see there's a little bit of a dent in this palette and in this shade, and it's mostly because it is rather soft, and I didn't really realize that when I was going into it with brush. I didn't read the information on that shade specifically and didn't know that it was what it was, and was wondering why my brush wasn't picking up this matte shadow as it should be. So I went in a little bit heavy with my brush and did get quite a bit of a dip going in there. I imagine this is a shade that you could probably pan really easy. If I pulled this into my Level Up project, that would probably be the shade that I would try to hit a pan on, because it just seems like it would be easy to me. This is a formula that is talc free, and it's smooth and glides smoothly across the eye, much like a wet formula, and it has a little bit of a luminosity to it in terms of how it is on the eye. This isn't because it's shiny, it's just because it reminds me of the difference between a matte black liquid liner and a glossy matte liquid liner. So this isn't going to like harden like liquid liners do, right? It is going to move around on your eye if you need it to, of course, but it does have that slight bit of nuance difference between like the KVD Trooper Black eyeliner versus like a NYX black eyeliner, which I feel like is a little bit more glossy. The metal gloss shadows, which are this one here called Homey, and this one here called Snug, are a little bit different in that they apply a little bit more wet. And I mean, look at that. They apply a little bit more wet. They have a little bit more impact on an eye look without having like fallout from like glitter, right? So they remind me of like a Natasha Denona version of like an elevated version of a Super Shock to some extent. They're not necessarily the same kind of like feel to the touch, but that's what they remind me of on an eye look. They're just really super impactful, really super brilliant, really super metallic. They literally look like liquid metal on your eyes. That said, I really don't, I mean, I didn't swatch this one for you. This one, I think that you can see like kind of the luminosity to the matte on here. It just slips and slides a little bit easier across an eye. There is no patchiness that happens in this because it's a little bit slippy. It does feel a lot more like it is silicone-y versus, you know, powdery, which is whatever it is. It's fine. It's fine. I don't 100% love that eyeshadow. It is what appears to be the darkest eyeshadow between the two, you know, on the ends here. They are the darkest eyeshadows in the palette, and this one just doesn't perform super dark, if I'm honest with you. And if you're not real particular about how you place it on your eye look, it is a struggle bus to get on an eye look, hence the big divot in it. I would say that this one specifically works better with a finger application, but that said, it is meant to be a matte on an eye look, so I don't place my mattes with my fingers, and I think that is why I struggled so much with that formula. I think it's going to take me a minute to figure out how best to use that shadow and get from it what I want to get from it, because I just didn't feel like it applied very well with a brush, even a dense brush. Her palettes are always cruelty free, which is great. You can always count on her for that. They are pretty powdery in the pan, but not really a cause of fallout on your face, which I actually really love her brand for. They're super soft and buttery to the touch. They all like have a lot of pigmentation to them, and most of them blend really well without getting, you know, patchy or voiding. Almost all of them blend really, really well without being patchy or voiding. Like I said, the only one that I really, really struggled with was this one, and I think it's just because it's a new formula and I haven't figured out how to use it best yet. I haven't really watched any other reviews of this palette because I know that I was going, I mean, I maybe watched reviews of it like a year ago, maybe. But I knew I was reviewing this palette and didn't really want to gain any preconceived notions from other people. I also didn't watch any of like Natasha's channel has videos on how to use these shadows best. So I will do that after this video is recorded so that I can get a little bit more insight into it. But at this point in time, that is not a shadow that I loved in this palette. I think that they are, and I have always said this, really best with a primer, but a glitter glue with Natasha Denona shadows really isn't necessary. Today I'm wearing her shadows without a glitter glue underneath of it. I feel like they last really long, but I am also not a person that has problems with like creasing or eyeshadows moving on my eyes. I have, you know, not oily eyelids. I've not got super dry eyelids, but I've also not got oily eyelids. So my shadows really kind of stay in place when I place them there for a good solid, you know, at least 8 hours, unless they're a shadow that just really is not great. And we've come across some of that as well. With that said, the wear time on these is a good 10 hours easy before I took off my makeup, and there was no notice of any kind of movement or fading or longevity issues with these shadows that I would come to you and tell you about that is outlandish, right? Or not even outlandish. You know, I expect a shadow to last on my eyes for a certain amount of time, and these did that for sure without a glitter glue, even for the shimmers. I feel like most of this palette is very mid to light leaning, and I really would have loved another like dark matte, like a darker brown matte. maybe a little less orangey, because I think that you guys can see from my eye look, these shadows, yes, they're warm, but I think that there's a way to do warm without it being orange. And for me, on my skin tone, which is kind of like a light olivey complexion, they just lean really orange instead of warmth, right? It reminds me a lot of the like Natasha Denona Sunset palette to some extent, only without the yellows. And honestly, looking at it and the golden, like they could interchangeably be almost the same, and bronze interchangeably could almost be the same palette. I think that there's a lot of overlap in those three palettes that didn't really need to be. This could have been done in a different way and been a lot less orange, because all of the shadows in here lean very peachy orange. I wish there was just a little bit more nuance to the browns in here to make it a little bit less orange. I don't know how many times I can say that, because there is a way to do warm without doing orange. The Slip Cream Matte, like I said, is not the most useful shadow. I do hope that I can figure out a way to use it without being frustrated by it in the way that I have been. I do love, as I said earlier, her ingenuity and her wish to continue to create masterful eyeshadows, but I wish just we'd take a break for just a second and figure out what was going on with the shadow formulas that she currently has that aren't as good as the shadow formulas that she had in the past. I think I've said this before, like I haven't, like the golden palette, okay, I have the golden palette, I also have the gold palette. I haven't used the golden palette because when I swatched the golden palette, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the sheer pigmentation in those palettes, because her palettes of old, like I have her blue green, I have her, or her purple blue, I have her green brown, and I have like her gold palette, and those, the pigmentation I feel like has deteriorated over time. The longevity I feel like has deteriorated over time. The impact I feel like has deteriorated over time. Not that this is a bad palette, but I wish that we'd take a moment, settle down on creating new formulas, and maybe I'm in on the outside looking in here. Maybe I'm not in the norm, but I wish we would figure out how to create the same kind of eyeshadows that we created in the past today with just a more elevated formula instead of trying to create new formulas. That said, I do think that the shadows in this palette are beautiful. I think that, you know, anybody who is interested in the warm eyeshadow palette will probably love this eyeshadow palette, to be honest. While I do think that the bronze palette and this palette could interchange with each other in most instances, I do think that this is a lot less bronze than I thought it was going to be. I love the addition of a multi-chrome here and a supposed duochrome here to give you a little bit of nuance to the palette that's not typical for her palette. And I honestly really do love those metal gloss formulas. I think that they are just stunning and impactful and really bring something new to her shimmers that hasn't been there. Natasha Denona usually has like a zodiac of her palettes, right? And the zodiac of her palettes is that you should be able to create a look if you go any way across or down or diagonal or like quads of 4 in her palettes. And I'm just not sure that I'm seeing that in this palette. I think that there is too many shimmers to create a full, I mean, like this row here has that gloss formula there, or that slip cream formula here, 3 shimmers and 1 matte. Like I can't complete a full eye look with that. And this one has 3 different mattes that literally these 2 here could be the same shade on your eye, just a very slight nuance and depth. And then this one is not super deep. I need a deeper tone than that in my outer corner, and 2 shimmers, one being a multi-chrome that could go all over the lid, and this one could go in your inner corner and your brow bone. But I just don't see the Natasha Denona Zodiac in this palette either. So I'm not necessarily certain that I'm disappointed with this palette, but I do know that I also am a color lover. So like take that for what you will. I did create some really beautiful eye looks out of this, but I don't know that this is the palette that if somebody asked me, is there a palette that I need from Natasha? I just don't know that this one would be it. I am pretty certain I would venture into her older palettes prior to recommending anything that's on the newer realm. Does that make any sense? Like it almost makes me not want to pick up Bloom. But I'm gonna pick up Bloom. But it almost makes me not want to pick up Bloom. That said, this does have 4.7 star rating at Sephora with 355 reviews. It has a 4.7 star rating at Ulta with 395 reviews and a 4.8 star rating at Natasha Denona with 516 reviews. A lot of the 1-star reviews are coming in with the fact that this is a lot more orange than they anticipated. Again, I do think that there is a way to do warm without there actually needing to be a full orange. I mean, like, we could have had some yellows in here. We could have had some warm pinks in here. We could have had, you know, I mean, there's just a way. There's a way to do warm without having to be peachy and orange. Do I think it's a wonderful palette? Sure. Am I happy to have it in my collection? Absolutely. I'm always happy to have a Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette in my collection. It would not be the first one I recommend, but I would recommend any of Natasha Denona to people. Like, I just think that she does a better job for eyeshadow formulation for longevity and eyeshadow formulation for also mature eyes, mature skin. I think that she does a really good job at. And that is why I am a stan of Natasha's. I also think that, you know, her formula, as much as I spent the first half of this talking about how we needed to correct the issues in our formulations today that weren't there, you know, years ago with the older palettes because they're a lot more pigmented and have a lot more like oomph and staying power. Like, she is pretty consistent in her formulations. You can always count on her shadows to be a really great shadow, right? So I really do feel like she does a good job of that. So all those things being said, let's look at the shadows. And I think that you will agree that there could have been a different way to do this warm eyeshadow palette without it leaning as orange as it does. So the first one here we have is Soft Spot. This is one of her matte eyeshadows, and it is a medium earthy brown tone that is probably the most neutral in this eyeshadow palette. We have Fancy, which is a metallic champagne, a really beautiful metallic color. It is in my eye look today on the inner corner. I loved wearing this as an inner corner shade. We have Mellow, which is a matte light peachy nude, really light peach, but not any more light peach than the peach on the end of this row. I think that both of them could go hand in hand with each other. We have Phenomena, which is the multi-chrome peach to pink to green shade. It is really beautiful. Then we have Ripe, which is the matte light medium peachy brown. As I said, I think that Ripe and Mellow, that third shade there, kind of go hand in hand in an eye look. I don't think both of them needed to be in this palette, if I'm honest with you. I think we could have put like a yellow in here instead of Mellow. I don't know. We could have just done a lot of things differently with this palette. Elm, next row down, is a sparkling foil shadow. This is a bronzy nude, according to the website. I don't really think it has a lot of bronzy nuance to it. I think it's more golden than it is bronzy. Then we have Snug, which is that metal gloss that I showed you earlier. This one is a soft brown. I think it's more of a peachy brown than a soft brown. And then we have Vim, which is a matte deep warm brown. Looks really deep in the palette. I don't really feel like it's as deep as it could be. Then we have Push, which is another sparkling foil. This is a rusty rose gold, really beautiful shadow. And then Fervor, which is a matte medium warm caramel. It was very, very, very orange. Then we have Pep, which is another matte. It is a matte deep warm brown. This is the deepest matte in here. I don't feel like it was as deep as I wanted it to be for an eye look. I definitely didn't bring a whole lot to an eye look, especially in tandem with like Vim. I think that we needed a darker brown in this palette, and this shade could have been a little bit more blackened, I feel like. Homie is the next metal gloss, or the last metal gloss in this palette. That one is a warm, like pinky nude. Really, really beautiful. I really had a good time with the metal gloss formula in this palette. Hanker is a metallic medium dark golden brown. I really liked that shadow too. It was really good for like a smoky eye. Then we have Dynamism, which is the duochrome in this palette, and it is a brown to green. So says the website. I don't really see a brown to green in here. I see like a peach to, I don't know, kind of bronze. Honestly, I don't know where they're getting brown green. And then Flashover is the Slip Cream Medium Brown Matte. And I just don't love that shadow. So that said, I think I would probably rank this palette. I mean, honestly, it's a really good palette. There's nothing wrong with any of the shadows in here. Even that Slip Cream, I think, is a problem for me because of user error, not because of palette, or not because of shadow error. Overall, this is a really good palette, right? So I would still probably rank it around that 4.7 star rating, and only 4.7, maybe 4.6, only because of the fact that it is almost one noted in that it is very, very orange, and that Slip Cream formula that I didn't get along with super well. So it is a palette that I think is recommendable. It is a palette that I think that if you love this color story, you should pick up. But I almost like, and y'all know how much I feel for the I Need a Nude. I almost like the I Need a Nude better than this palette because there is a lot more nuance to that palette than I feel like we're getting out of this one. So let me know if you agree. Moving on to the Pat McGrath palette. This was a palette that I received in friend mail, and I am so grateful to have received it in friend mail. This is the Pat McGrath Mothership 12, her newest mothership with the name Petalmorphosis. This is a $128 palette. You guys, I still have the like protector on here, which is why there's like some bubbling on here. So don't mind that, but I love this palette for the gradient of the lavenders here, where it's really light lavender to like a deeper, almost brighter lavender. This is the limited edition palette color for this mothership, and it was friend mail. So excited about. This does have this on the front, just the Pat McGrath Labs like symboline here in the gold leafing, and then this gold, what used to be a plate on the back is now I think a sticker. I don't know, it just looks different. Yes, it's cupped into the edges. I'll have to grab one of my other one. I was gonna anyways. You can see all my dirty fingerprints on it, but this tells you all about the palette. It's got, you know, her little, you know, things, her words that she says about ecstasy and blah blah blah. And then her sticker here that tells you a little bit more about the palette. When you open it up, it looks like this. It's got a beautiful beveled mirror, and these are the shadows in the palette. And one of the first things that you will note is there are not the baked shadows in this palette that are in palettes of the past, so the special shades. Although we are getting 5 special shades in this palette, they're not the same as the old special shades. So there are 10 shadows in this palette that are an avant-garde of color. So says Pat McGrath on her website. There are 10 shadows in here, 0.7 ounces of product total, or 0.07 ounces per pan. So just almost about twice the size as the Natasha Denona palette pan size that you're getting 0.04 ounces of product in each pan, 15 shadows, and for about half the price of what you're paying for this. This limited edition component didn't cost extra money to get. It was just limited edition, right? And you could order the lilac or the black. I do think that the color story looks better with the black packaging than it does in the lilac packaging, but I'm so happy to have the lilac packaging. There are 4 different finishes in this palette. You have matte, you have astral, you have metallic, and you have blitz. I would honestly also venture to say that you have sequin in here, even though that's not listed on the website. It is listed in the description of the shades as a matte with golden shimmers, but it is clearly a sequin shadow. If you pat that shadow on there, the glitters are going to stay on your lid. However, as soon as you start buffing that shadow in any way, those glitters disappear, in effect making it a sequined eyeshadow. This palette reminds me a lot of the What's Up Beauty Dragon's Eye palette. I wanted that palette so bad. So I don't know that I necessarily need that palette anymore. And I don't know if they are exactly the same, right? But just saying. This is also the first Mothership palette in 2 years. And I don't know what's going on with the baked formula issue, but I have heard that there's some issues with her baked formulas, which is why she's not putting them in palettes anymore. I wonder even if the old palettes include the baked formulas still, even if they're newer in production, right? So if you know what's going on with her baked shadows, please let me know. I am not wholeheartedly a Pat McGrath Labs like stan, like, you know, some of my friends out here on the platform. I do like her palettes. I have several, but I don't know as much about like the ins and outs of her formulations like I do about like Natasha's. So please let me know. I brought one of my older palettes over here so that, you know, for those of you who aren't sure what I'm talking about, this is the Sublime palette, and you can see these 4 shades here are her baked formulas, and they just sit in the palette and in the pan just differently, right? Than those 4 on the end there do. They just sit in there just differently. So you know that the formulation is just a little bit different. In addition to that, this one, like those 4 in shades, they just kind of explode everywhere because they are baked formula. They're kind of like, I don't know, grippy, right? They're kind of almost like you can feel the different textures that went into this special shadow, whereas these ones are super soft and smooth, not nearly what you would expect from her special shadow. We do get 5 special shadows in this palette versus the 4 that we were getting in older palettes. So these 4 are special shadows in addition to this one. I think that this one feels the most like these special shadows do, right? In the fact that you can feel kind of the grittiness of the textures in that shadow. I do think that there's a differentiation in the baked formula versus this pressed formula, enough that it might steer people away from purchasing Pat McGrath in the future at this price point. Because yes, the palette is beautiful. Yes, the component is amazing, but I'm getting use out of the makeup, right? And we were paying $128 because her formula was amazing and her special shadows, like, we all lost our mind on them. I'm not sure these special shadows are the kind of shadows that you lose your mind about anymore. So that said, let me know what you think about that. The mattes in this palette are fine. They blend well and they're super, super pigmented. Even the sequin shade in here, which again is this one here, is really nice. I feel like it blended well and there was no impact to the blend because of the different shimmers in this sequin shade. They're all super buttery soft. I didn't find that they were skipping at all. There was no voiding. There was no patchiness. There was just nothing. These are really nice mattes, and it took me a long time to get to a point where I was like, I like Pat McGrath's mattes. As a matter of fact, I think it's only been the last 3 palettes that I've reviewed by Pat McGrath that I've really liked her matte formula in. So I don't know what difference she did in her formula or if it was just a me problem, but I do like the mattes in this palette, including the sequin one. It was really nice. I love that we have like a green and kind of a lavender, and then her baseline like kind of corally pinky shade, right? So her safe shade, I would say. And I feel like they all went with each other. I even did a look using the green and this green shimmer and this purple shimmer also on an eye look, which is not a color story that you typically would put together, and it was just so pretty. I got so many compliments on that eye look. My mom, I remember sitting with me on a couch and looking at me and just going, "Oh, your eye look is so pretty." And that is what I was wearing. So the shimmers in here are gorgeous and apply easily with or without a glitter glue. I don't feel like these are shimmers that you need a glitter glue for, which is another difference, because I definitely feel like these special shades you need a glitter glue for, or they're going to be all over your face. Again, they're exploded all over the palette, right? So they will be all over your face. I don't feel the same way about these ones. These work best applied with your finger for all of the shimmers in here, except for like this one I feel like works really well without finger application, and this one works really well without finger application, but I think that you're going to get a better impact with the finger application versus a brush application with these shadows for sure. I do feel like we are missing something from the lack of baked shadows with this palette. As I said, they aren't nearly as brilliant as they once were, and I'll show you with the other palette. They also are just kind of regular. For her price point, we need a little bit more than regular. I feel like this is a shadow palette that I could get from What's Up Beauty, because it's the same color story and the shadows are like same pressed pigment kind of shadows. The price point definitely dictates better, right? These are stunning, though I'm not gonna say that they're not. I also love this palette for the variety of eye looks I was able to get out of it. When partnering it with the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm, I was feeling a little bit like bored, right? But I knew I could pull this palette in and get a little bit more oomph. As a matter of fact, this shimmer right here is on this eye look right here because I wasn't getting what I wanted from the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm. I would also say that there's not a problem with fallout in this palette. They're neither powdery in the pan nor powdery on your face. Like, there's zero fallout with this, which is amazing. And their wear time is easy 10 hours. Easy 10 hours. It is still, I know that we all have said that we had like some kind of, feel some sort of way about the fact that Pat McGrath is always coming out with pinky eyeshadow palettes. And while this has greens in it and everybody's like losing their mind because, oh my God, she's finally dabbling in color. It's not, there's not a whole lot of color in here. And if you cover up like this shade here and this shade here, it's still a pinky eyeshadow palette. Right? So I think our eyes are lying to us in that it is still a pink eyeshadow palette with some pops of green. I think what's interesting is I've always said that I love Pat McGrath's website because she always has the anatomy of a palette, right? Where it goes through each shade and tells you what each of those shades is for and the makeup of those shades and what kind of like formula they are. There is no anatomy of a palette of this palette on her website at this point in time. I do believe that maybe it'll be there at some point in time, but go back to some of the other what she does have on this palette is really cool on her website. But I do think that if you go back to like even the Sublime palette and look at the anatomy of a palette, you'll want that for this palette also. I think that it is, I think it's a really cool thing that she does, and I'm really sad that I wasn't able to find it on this palette. I also think that it's interesting, like I said, I feel like this is a sticker, and the reason I say that, again, is because when I pull Sublime out, you can see this is clearly metal, right? You can see that it is metal. This is etched into the metal here. This is metal. It just comes to abrupt edges. This one is just so bright. This piece here is not etched in there. It's more like stamped on here. You can see it's kind of got a beveled edge to it, which tells me that they had to wrap it around parts of the palette. I feel like it's a sticker. So in not only in formulation are we getting a different palette, but also in component we're getting a different palette. So I just feel, I don't know, I feel some sort of way about that. The cruelty-free status, if you are a cruelty-free only makeup wearer, the cruelty-free status on Pat McGrath Labs is a little up in the air. Like the website says that it is cruelty free. However, in 2017 it said it's cruelty free except for we don't test on animals except for we're required by law. And in 2018 they took that off of those words, off of their cruelty free status, you know, mention on their website, but didn't make any mention as to why that change was made. And they are also not listed, as far as I can find, on any of the cruelty-free big namers, right? So PETA doesn't have them listed. If that is something that you look for in a palette, this isn't going to be the palette for you. This does have 4.4 stars on, or 4.5 stars on Sephora with only 11 reviews. Like I said, this is a really new palette. And it has 5 stars on Ulta, but Ulta only has 1 view at this point in time. It did start selling on the Ulta website a lot later than it started selling on the Sephora website. I really can't, like, I wouldn't put any kind of like weight into those reviews. I would, because who knows, one of the ones that ranked it like 1 star on Sephora was about the fact that the box that she received this in when she purchased it from Sephora came broken in shipping, and not the palette, the box, the outer cartridge, which I get because we all keep our Pat McGrath palettes in their outer cartridge, right? I still have my Sublime one, right? But at the same time, like, that isn't a reason, in my humble opinion, to rank a palette a 1 star. That's a reason maybe to rank Sephora a 1 star, but not the palette itself. So, like, I wouldn't put any kind of weight into those reviews as of yet. Like, wait until there's hundreds of reviews, right? I myself would probably put this in the 4.8 star rating. I really loved this palette. I loved every minute with this palette. I am so grateful to have it as a friend gift. I will never forget you. You know who you are. Some of my favorite eye looks over the last 4 weeks came from this palette. This was a surprising favorite shade for me. I loved this shade so much. It's just this really beautiful, like, I don't know, plummy maroon that was so pretty in an eye look. And I do have pictures of the, you know, a couple eye looks that it was in. I would put it on an outer corner. I would put it all over the lid. I smoked it out at one point in time. I loved it. I also loved these 3 colors together in that eye look. I loved these 3 colors together. These 2 blend so well. While this looks very golden in the screen here, it's actually kind of this like chartreusey green shade that blends just so perfectly in with that green shade. Let me show you here on my hand. It just creates this beautiful blend of an eye look, and that's just, you know, my finger blending them together with a brush and perfecting with your finger. It's just a beautiful like gradient of like this brilliant, like almost tealy emerald green to this chartreusey yellowy green. I loved this palette. And again, like I said, this shade here is on my eye look today. It is such a beautiful, like, pinky corally color. It's a little bit duochromy. So like I said, the special shades in here I do feel like are special, but I don't think that they are as special as Special Shadows of Olden Days. So I did want to pull this palette out and just kind of show you specifically this shadow here and this shadow here, because I feel like those are similar to this shadow here and this shadow here in this palette. So we're going to do that really quick. I have the Sublime and the Petalmorphosis, clearly 2 different shades of green, right? But the Petalmorphosis one is bright and shiny, but the Sublime one, I don't even know if you guys can see it. The Sublime one has, like right there, a little bit more nuance to it. Like it turns like this purple, like duochromy thought process on it. And it's just so different and unexpected. And even on the finger swatch, like there's still quite a bit of that shadow on here. And there is enough on here to like make it impactful, whereas it's like completely gone off of that finger. Like that doesn't like hurt my feelings at all. This is not me saying that it's worse because it's not baked. It's just me saying it just looks Really, really different. So these two, you know, this shade is this one here, and this shade is this one here. And I do have to say that the one in this palette, this one here, feels the most like these ones do in the palette. This is the old palette one, and this is the new palette. This is the new palette one. I just feel like there is a level of nuance with the old special shadows, the baked formulas, that is so much better than the new formula. Not that the new formula is bad, because it's clearly not. I mean, these two shades here are beautiful, but I just feel like there's a lot more like flippiness to these two that you don't get with these two. Let me know if you feel the same. For those of you that have some of the older Pat McGrath formula versus the newer Pat McGrath formula, let me know your thoughts and opinions. With that said, let's talk about these shades really quick. I'm going to go weirdly through this palette. Like we're going to talk about the shades like from here to here, here to here, here to here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that way, because that's just how I swatched them. So the first one is Divine Dawn. Divine Dawn is a beautiful warm golden beige luminizer. It's super, super pretty. It works really well in the inner corners. Brow bone highlight. This would be, I think, Pat's standard brow bone highlight for her palette. In all of her palettes, she has one. Nocturnal Bloom is this beautiful, rich hunter green matte that shows up green in an eye look. Even though it's super dark, it looks almost blackened. It is definitely a green in an eye look, but when mixed with like the purples in this, or the pinkies in this palette, it does appear like a black. So you could definitely make it darker if you wanted to. Next we have Twilight Lilac. Twilight Lilac is a lilac plum matte. One of my favorites to use in this palette. Then we have Astral Iridescent Iris. This is the beautiful, like purpley, iridescent astral shade. It's got some like pinky glitters in it and some purple glitters in it. It's such a beautiful shadow, but it is the topper in this palette. Then we have Cosmic Fantasies. Again, the burgundy metallic in here that is like this like plummy burgundy metallic. It's such a pretty shadow. One of my favorites, if not my favorite to use in this palette. I think between that one and the one right before it, the Astral Iridescent Iris, those two were the two probably most used shimmers in this palette. And then we have a Lunar Nectar, which is the Coral Rose Sequined Matte. It does say on the website Coral Rose Matte with golden shimmers. It is golden shimmers, and unless you pack that on and leave it packed on, or use like a glitter glue, pack it on, those shimmers don't stay. It is very much a matte, a sequin matte in this palette, and the sequins actually don't impact the blendability of the shadow at all, like they do in a lot of other different brand formulations of this kind. Then we have Astral Eden Envy. This is a beautiful chartreusey astral. Chartreusey green, yellow green astral shade with golden pearl. It can shift really, really gold if you partner it with browns, which I did at one point in time with some of the browns in the Natasha Denona I Need a Warm palette, and it looked very gold. But with the greens in this palette, it looks very chartreuse. It's so, so pretty. Then we have Blitz Radiant Rhapsody. This is a metallic turquoisey blue-green. I would say it shows up more green than it does turquoise, but it does have blue shimmers in it that are so pretty. Then we have Astral Sunset Splendor. This is the iridescent coral astral. This is what is on my eye look today. It's such a beautiful, like almost duochrome, peachy coral to pink. It really reminds me of like a NARS Orgasm blush on crack. And then we have Blitz Bronze Supernova, which is the platinum bronze with silver pearl metallics in it. And it is a beautiful bronze shadow, but I wouldn't say that you can see the silver shiftiness that this claims that it has. You definitely can't see that in this swatch. I think that you would agree. So that said, like, I think I just did like a ranking of Pat McGrath palettes. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't do a ranking yet of Pat McGrath, but I know I have a ranking in the mix of Pat McGrath. And this would have to be right up there in like top 3 eyeshadow palettes for me in my Pat McGrath collection, even though I feel like we're missing something with not having the baked formula in here. I also think that there's, you know, some things that I wish were still the case with the packaging, in terms of like just some ways that you can see that they're cutting costs, right? But this is $128, and I wish I felt like I am a person who believes that with the Pat McGrath palette, you are paying for the component and the name behind it and not necessarily the shadows. I don't think 0.07 ounces of product is a whole lot more product than what you're getting. I mean, overall, you're only getting 0.7 ounces of product for $128, whereas in the Natasha Denona, you're getting 0.64 ounces of product for $69 and 5 more shades, right? So do I think it's worth it? I don't think I've ever been an advocate of paying $128 for a palette, no matter who it's from. And I would say the same thing, like worth it is a matter of opinion, right? It's subjective. So it depends on you and what you're willing to pay. I would have paid $128 for that palette, so maybe it's worth it to me, but at the same time, I think that there's a lot of idiosyncrasies that we expect from Pat McGrath that aren't in this palette that create the question as to why we're still charging $128 for these eyeshadow palettes, in my mind anyways. And with that said, that is what I have for you. I would recommend that palette. That Pat McGrath palette would probably be my #1 recommendation of Pat McGrath palettes. I have that one. I love Midnight Sun. I love Utopian. Those are my 3 favorites from Pat McGrath. I also really love Sublime, but if I'm honest with you, I love Sublime for that beautiful deep like foresty green that has like the purple flip, and only that shade. I love my Pat McGrath collection, but I would recommend the palette. That I mean, a 4.8 star is pretty good in my mind. So that said, I'm gonna go pick my next palette. I will be right back. So you guys, I don't have very many palettes left because, you know, I've been through all my palettes and I've been on a no-buy this year, so we've went 6 months without purchasing a new palette. And granted, I will be bringing Bloom into my collection at some point because I know that I have enough points, Ulta points, to purchase that palette, but that isn't going to create a whole lot left in my collection. So I have been, all that to say, I have been doing these palette roulettes with 2 or sometimes even 3 palettes that I'm doing. And I went back to just 1 palette this time. And that just 1 palette is, I think I'm making a smart decision by bringing in the Legend of Land and Sea by Question Beauty, because I've already done a get ready with me using this palette and I was so excited for it. And I feel like this palette is going to like maybe really connect well with my Build Your Own palette that I have also in my, you know, palettes that I'm trying to use or things that I'm trying to use. I also think it will work well with the Level Up palette that I have going. So I'm only bringing in 1 palette at this point in time. I know that I can blow through these 10 shades, nothing flat. I did 2 eye looks with it in the Get Ready With Me and have already used all 10 of these shades. So I kind of already have an idea of like what shades I love to use in this palette and which ones I didn't love using, which I have to be honest is none. I didn't have a problem with any of them. but I'm going to go back to one palette. That means I have potentially 5 more of these videos to do. And if I bring in more than one palette at a time, which with the minis, I'm going to bring them all in at the same time. But if I bring in more than one palette, I'm going to only have like maybe 2 more months of this. And I really like this video. And I know that you guys do too, even though the views might be low. I hear from all of you that watch these videos about how much you love these videos. So all that to say, I'm only going to bring in one palette this time, and it is going to be the Question Beauty Legend of Land and Sea palette. This is another one I received in friend mail, and I cannot wait to do wear tests on it, and I cannot wait to do a review on it, and I cannot wait to tell you all the things that I think about the palette, and I hope that you're here for it. And if you are, please subscribe before you go so that you can come along for the ride. Thank you guys so much for watching me today. I appreciate every single one of you for being here today. If you have tried the 2 palettes that I just reviewed for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on those palettes, good, bad, or indifferent, even in terms of like how you feel about my review of the palette, good, bad, or indifferent. I love hearing from you guys down in the comments section. I still am in a place where I'm answering all of your comments. It might take me a minute, but I'm still answering them. So please hit me up down in the comments section. I would love to hear from you guys. And with that said, again, just thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best that you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and living your best life. And until next time, bye friends.